This is Matt O'Hearn with SpaceCoastDaily.com. I'm here with Orville Susong, and in for Steve Wilson, Anthony Knockreiner is joining us this week. Steve's out on the road, but this week we'll be talking about Week 10 in the high school football season. First up, the game of the week. We have Orlando Jones facing the Cocoa Tigers. Orville, let's start off with this matchup and talk about Orlando Jones. They've been a little inconsistent this season. One week they look like world beaters, the next week they look like they couldn't beat anyone in their district. Whereas we have Cocoa, who's pretty consistent all year. They have that vaunted defense of theirs, and they have one of the most talented offenses in the area. Do you see the Cocoa Tigers winning this one?
Well, I see a Tiger team winning it. I do believe the Cocoa Tigers will be the Tigers that do. This is the battle of the Tigers, and it's also the battle for the district title in Class 4A District 5. The district play, the winner of this game wins the district and gets their first playoff game at home. The loser will be the runner-up in the district, and they will take their playoff hopes on the road. Both teams won district games last week. Cocoa over Port Orange Atlantic 45-0, and Orlando Jones beat Cocoa Beach 46-6. For this game, I like my number one team in my top 5. I'll take the Tigers.
All right, Anthony, how do you see this game going?
Well, first I want to say thanks for you guys letting me come in. I know I've got big shoes to fill with Steve Wilson and a lot of pairs of shoes because he's gone through so many this season. But I got to agree with Orville. I think the Cocoa Tigers do come out on top on this one. I like the Orlando Jones Tigers. They're very athletic. They're a very good team. But here's the thing, though. Coach John Wilkinson doesn't want to play Clewiston that first round. Clewiston is a much improved team than we've seen in the past few years. So I got to think he's telling his kids, we need to win this money game. We need to stay at home. And then we'll probably have, I think, Clewiston. Whoever wins this game will have Clewiston in the second round.
You know, that's a good point. We know that Wilkinson and his team really appreciate their pregame rituals and their routines and traditions, and he's talked about that in the past, even and during some of those state championship runs they made. When they would have to travel, he would try to mimic their pregame home rituals as much as possible, so he always loves to host that first round. Moving on, we have Atlantic at Space Coast. Orville, early on in this season, I thought Space Coast would be able to produce a season that was pretty similar to what they did last year. I thought that they'd be able to move on from their talented quarterback that they lost coming into the season due to graduation, but Nick Rittenhouse is looking better and better each week. That's no knock on the current Vipers team. We just realize, you know, whether it's NFL, college, or high school, replacing a special quarterback like him, it's pretty difficult, is it not?
Well, I agree with you. Jake Owens and the Space Coast Vipers, at the beginning of the year, I thought they were going to have a very good season. Unfortunately, somewhere early in the season, the wheels fell off of the wagon. And that happens to a lot of teams. And if you look at this season, it's happened to a lot of teams this year. A lot of games this week with playoff implications. And this is a district contest, but neither one of these two teams will make the playoffs. The Cocoa Tigers and the Orlando Jones Tigers have already sewed up this district. Space Coast 4-4 overall. Port Orange Atlantic 2-6. You got to think the Vipers will get a big win this week.
All right, Anthony, what's your outlook for this one?
Well, I mean, Alex Cavender's played very well. I'm not sure so much as the quarterback position has been in question, but sometimes a season where you have a lot of supporting cast members that can really pump up that quarterback. I think Space Coast lost those guys last year to graduation, and I really want to see head coach Jake Owens get the win. They could still go for a winning record. You still want to see this team have a winning record. I hope they win out the rest of the way and have a 6-4 record. But I like Space Coast in this one. I think Cavender, who's also one of the leaders in the passing around the Space Coast, I think he can get the job done for Space Coast this week.
Yeah, and you know, no knock on his passing ability. The thing that was so special about Rittenhouse, though, as we saw, I mean, he was all over the place. He could run, and even on defense, he was pretty talented. So you're right, though, there was a overall loss, not just Rittenhouse, just an overall loss of talent they had in several positions. But I have a feeling they'll be back next year and pretty close to where they were a couple seasons ago. Next up, we have one of the oldest rivalries on the Space Coast. We have Astronaut and Titusville. Orville, typically, this is one of those games where we could say throw the records out because it's such an intense rivalry, and usually Astronaut has at least a few playmakers in different areas. This season, though, the cupboard seems like it's been pretty bare for Randy Halleck up there on the north side, whereas Titusville has just a slew of talented offensive players, including quarterback Yusef Darius and other playmakers around the field. Do you see any reason not to think that the Terriers should walk away with a pretty easy win in this one?
No, I don't think so. Merritt Island sits at the top of this Class 5A District 12 area, and you have to like Merritt Island to be the district winner there. Astronaut and Titusville, like you said, Matt, has always been a great rivalry. But Wayne Lawrence has came onto the scene last year, and now he is put new discipline, put new strength and conditioning programs together for the Titusville Terriers, and it's slowly starting to work. And you have to like what he's doing at Titusville. Both teams had district wins last week, which is great for Astronaut. I think that's what their second win of the season. Titusville wins this game, I think, and they move on toward the playoffs.
All right, Anthony, what's your prediction?
I think that Titusville does win, and I agree with Orville that Titusville, I think, unfortunately, they win big. I don't know if Randy Halleck's team has enough depth and speed to keep up with a Yusef Darius and a Jaleel Davis. And I'll tell you what, Wayne Lawrence, what he's done with Yusef Darius, a freshman quarterback on the Space Coast, what he's done with him just shows the kind of coach that he is, because that's very impressive. A freshman quarterback that's played so well and leading his team to the playoffs for the first time in a very long time is just very impressive. And Coach Wayne Lawrence has done a tremendous job, and his staff has done a tremendous job with these Terriers this year.
All right, well, that is the first segment. Coming up, we'll be talking about Heritage at Bayside, Holy Trinity at MCC, and Martin County at Viera. And we're back. Starting off, Orville, with Heritage at Bayside. These are two teams, Orville, where we know they're going to have some pretty good size on them. Heritage has a trio of running backs there, and we all know about Josh Gaines. This should be a pretty interesting matchup there on the south part of the county.
Well, this is a big Class 6A matchup between Bayside and Heritage. The Friday night locker room went down and we watched Heritage last week. Unfortunately, a heartbreaking loss to South Fork, 34-33. But the Bayside Bears right now hitting on all cylinders. They're undefeated in their district, and Heritage will try to give Bayside their first district loss of the year. I don't believe they will be able to do it. I think the Bayside Bears stay on the ground, and they will grind out a win against the Heritage Panthers this week.
Okay, yeah, I'm not sure which way this one will go. Anthony, what's your prediction?
Well, I think the question is what does head coach Mark Ainsley do with this week? A lot of sloppy play from Heritage against South Fork on Friday, and a lot of mistakes that were on them. They shot themselves in the foot too many times, and you can't do that to a good Bayside team. Bayside is going to try and dink and duck you and run the ball down your throat. I think what Bayside needs to do is they got to go deep on Heritage. The South Fork had some success. Try to replicate that success if they can. But I agree with Orville. I think Bayside's got a very good chance of beating Heritage, but Heritage can win if they clean up all the mistakes they made from Friday, but I don't know if Heritage can do that.
All right, and then next up we have Holy Trinity at MCC, another rivalry here. But I also think, like the Astronaut and Titusville game, one team is really just in too much of a down year to make this very competitive. We like Coach Hook at Holy Trinity, but it could be a long night for Holy Trinity against the Hustlers, could it not?
Yeah, no playoffs this year for first-year coach Nate Hooks. Like you said, we like him very much. Came from Titusville last year. This is his first year at Holy Trinity. But I think if you let Nate Hooks get his conditioning systems in and he gets everything in place, I think you'll have Holy Trinity playing better and better year after year. They're going to have to give him an opportunity to stay there a few years in order to get things right. He only works with 20, 22, 23 players, so it's tough. You know, graduation and stuff takes 5 or 6 players a year away from you. So it's going to be tough for him to do that. But I think if they give him the time, and I'm saying they, the administration and the fans and the parents, if they give him an opportunity and the time to put his program together like he wants, I think that he can be very successful there. But I don't think, I mean, MCC's hitting on all cylinders. You know, Brandon Ziarno, the Erdman brothers, those guys are going to just run it down Holy Trinity's throat, and they're not going to take their foot off the gas pedal. They're going to put up as many points as they can, just because they're getting ready to go into the playoffs. They're going to work on some plays, I think, that they haven't done all year, but I still think MCC comes away with a huge win over our buddy Nate Hooks and his Holy Trinity Tigers.
All right, Anthony. Now, do you think that MCC will keep its cards close to the vest, or you think, like Orville said, they'll try to experiment with some new plays as they prepare for the playoffs?
I think it depends on where the game is. You know, if MCC's already got an early lead, 21 points or 14 points, I think what they want to do is they want to keep their players healthy. Because let's face it, you need healthy players for the playoff, and you want to make that playoff push. So I think what happens is that if MCC gets an early enough lead, they just run the ball, try to run out the clock, play good defense, and try to escape out of against Holy Trinity, and just make sure that all your players aren't hurt. You don't get any serious injuries to your key players. That way you can go to the playoffs relatively healthy.
All right, moving along, we have Martin County at Viera. This district was made official as far as the standings last Friday, Orville, as the Hawks emerged victorious against Space Coast, but the pivotal game was that Martin County game, in which Martin County lost. Therefore, Viera was your official 2014 district champs. They clinched that home win. We were just talking about keeping players fresh. Do you think Coach Mays calls off the Dogs in this one, or do you think he keeps things rolling with the first team most of the game?
Well, first off, I would like to congratulate Kevin Mays and the Viera Hawks for, number one, getting their first district championship in school history. I'll go ahead and congratulate him now, being undefeated for the rest of the season. First time they've done that in school history. And congratulations for getting into the playoffs for the first time in school history. So you have to like that. You know, Martin County lost last week to Melbourne 28-14. Viera continuing to put up big numbers offensively week after week. They scored 40 points against the Space Coast Vipers. So you have to like that. Zach Blance, the running back for them, has rushed over 770 yards so far this season. Hayden Kingston, the quarterback, he's thrown for 18 touchdowns. And the number 2 athletic guy in the county, Trey Nixon, has caught 9 of those. I like my number 2 team in the in my top 5. And I think they'll get a big win this week. I'll take the Hawks.
All right, and Anthony, what's your outlook on this one?
Well, I kind of agree with you. I think Coach Mays is going to play. He's going to play his starters in the first half, see where they are. If they're up by 28 points, which I do kind of expect them to be against the Martin County team. I think he calls off the Dogs in the second half because, like we said, once again, this is you know Viera wants to make a statement in these playoffs. They're also state ranked, and they're also trying to establish this program legitimately in the state of Florida and make themselves a very good powerhouse. Plus, like we talked about MCC and Holy Trinity, you want to keep all your cards close to the vest, especially when you're playing teams that are going to be way out of the way. Like I know they have the district with Port Charlotte, and they're going to play those teams, and those guys really don't know much about Viera.
Right.
So you want to play things close. So I think Viera is going to have a win, but I think they're going to rest their starters by at least the fourth quarter.
Oh.
Let me say something what Anthony said about maybe Kevin Mays resting some people in the second half. Kevin Mays and Viera Hawks are trying to make a statement. They're 7-0. They're undefeated in the district. I think that he's going to have his foot on the gas pedal all the way through to the front bumper of that bus. He's not going to let up. He's trying to make a statement that the Viera Hawks, number 1, are for real. I think they're going to try to put 80 points on the board this week, and they could do it.
All right, and 2 very interesting predictions there. We'll see what happens. Coming up, we have the final 4 games on our list. We have Melbourne at Sebastian River, Merredon versus Rockledge. That's an old rivalry there. Palm Bay at Satellite, and O'Galley at Cocoa Beach. And we're back for the final parts of our list on the matchups. We have Melbourne at Sebastian River. Orville, I know you're a big fan of what the Bulldogs have been doing this year. They had a very close game there versus the Viera Hawks, and a few different plays here or there, and a couple of different games this season that they could be sitting in a much better position. And coming into this game versus Sebastian River, you think they kind of have a chip on their shoulder?
Well, first off, as Steve Wilson would say, let's not live in the past, but let's live in the past for a minute or two. I remember when Todd Wilson left the Cocoa Tigers and went to Melbourne and took over a team that was in disarray. They had 3 coaches and never hiked the ball.
Right.
There at one point. Wilson went in and turned that program around and made it a very respectable program again, like A.J. Ulmer had it when he was there. So you have to like what the Melbourne Bulldogs do. And I do, but against the Sebastian River Sharks, this is a Class 7A District 12 contest. Vieira Hawks already sewed up the district title here, so Melbourne and Sebastian will fight this week for the number 2 spot. Both teams won district games last week, so you know it's hard to say Melbourne or Sebastian River, but I like what Todd Wilson has done for the last few years with the Melbourne Bulldogs and that program, and so I'm going to give the nod to the Bulldogs this week. I think they beat Sebastian River.
All right, Anthony, I have a feeling your prediction will be pretty similar. Before the show, we were talking about Melbourne, and you believe they are one of the top 5 teams in the area, right?
Yeah, I have them somewhere in my top 5. Obviously, we'll reveal where they are later, but I think Melbourne has a decent chance to win this game. But the key for them is to stop Emmanuel Reed. Mm-hmm. And the thing about Melbourne is they've played some pretty good players that they've needed to stop on defense. The most points they've given up is 28 to Palm Bay and 21 to the Vieira Hawks. They've not allowed anyone to score more than that. Mm-hmm. And I think the Sebastian River Sharks are not the caliber of a Vieira or a Palm Bay team. But they still got to stop Emmanuel Reed. He leads the Treasure Coast in rushing, and he's an electrifying player. I haven't had a chance to catch him myself, but I've heard some things about him, very good things. And B.J. Daniels is no slouch in that department either. He's a leading rusher here in the Space Coast. And I think B.J. Daniels carries the Melbourne Bulldogs to a victory, and the defense slows down Emmanuel Reed. I don't know if you can completely shut Reed down, but I think they slow him down. All
right, and next up we have one of the oldest rivalries in the area. This used to be real bloodbath, and just a lot of passion in this one. Merritt Island and Rockledge. I could go on about some of the great games we saw in the past. However, with the way the Mustangs are playing lately compared to the Raiders, I don't expect this one to be very close. Orville, I think the Mustangs' offense is just too potent for this Raider team to slow down, which is funny to say about a Rockledge team because they're known for their defense typically.
Absolutely.
But how do you see this one going?
Well, the Merritt Island Mustangs sealed their playoff role last week with another win over the Palm Bay Pirates, and this is the 3rd win in 3 games that Merritt Island over the last 2 years has beat the Palm Bay Pirates. So Dan Burke has got to be licking his wounds there. The Raiders lost to Titusville last week, another district game, 42-7. For the rest of the season, unfortunately for the Rockledge Raiders, they play for Raider pride. There will be no playoffs this year for the Rockledge Raiders. If you look at it on paper, the Mustangs rolling right now. They're hitting on all cylinders. You have to take the Mustangs in this one.
Anthony, do you see it pretty much the same way?
I'd have to agree with Orville. I mean, the Merritt Island Mustangs coming off a victory against Palm Bay and doing it for the 3rd straight time, I don't see them stumbling here against Rockledge.
All right. Speaking of Palm Bay, they will be playing the Satellite Scorpions. And speaking of playing for pride, that's essentially what it's come down to for Coach Burke and the Pirates. Just to give our fans some perspective, the last time that the Palm Bay Pirates did not make the state playoffs, I looked this up. Bill Clinton was running for re-election. I had not yet earned my driver's license, and many other things were going on in the world at that time that if we actually thought about how long ago that was, I think would just blow our minds. Oh, and the Florida Gators were working on a championship under Steve Spurrier. So a lot has transpired since then. Orville, they're playing the Satellite Scorpions. I would not want to be the Satellite Scorpions with an angry Dan Burke coming into town.
Well, when I was working on this earlier this morning, I thought about that, and that's the statement that I would make. I would not like to be a Satellite Scorpion this Friday night when Dan Burke and the Pirates show up over there at Satellite. Dan Burke and the Palm Bay Pirates they're looking to beat somebody up this Friday night. And unfortunately for Satellite, that's where it's going to happen. The Palm Bay Pirates give Satellite a big, big black eye this week.
Yeah, I agree. I think Palm Bay wins by at least 4 to 5 touchdowns here.
Unfortunately, I'd have to agree with you, Matt. I like Satellite and what the head coach is doing. They're improving as a team. The defense is playing very well, but I don't see how Satellite upsets a Palm Bay team that's very angry. They don't like losing, and they don't like being shut out at their own place, so they're looking for revenge.
All right, and that leads us to our last matchup of the day. We have O'Galley at Cocoa Beach. Orville, not a good year for either of these programs. Is this one of those games where they both just start building toward next season?
Well, I think you have to, and this is one, O'Galley Commodores is one of the teams that you looked at the beginning of the season thinking they're going to have a very good season. They have brought in players and more players every year for the last 3 or 4 years since the new coaching staff took over. And then you add what I think is one of the best defensive minds in the county right there with Pat Lust and Bobby Holloway to turn up the O'Galley defense. Unfortunately, for some reason or another, Bobby Holloway and the coaching staff have not gotten the message to the players, and so that's a tough one right there. But after making the playoffs last year, the O'Galley Commodores come in this week having not won a district game all season. The Cocoa Beach Minutemen have not won a game all year, so it comes down to, like you said, comes down to a little bit of pride, and I think the pride's got to swing to O'Galley. Cocoa Beach is 0-8 right now, or 0-7, whatever it is. They're not going to beat the Commodores. It could be a low-scoring game, but I just think O'Galley's going to come out with a win here.
Yeah, that's how I see it going. What about you, Anthony?
I agree with Orville. O'Galley's got very good players. Unfortunately, a down year. Not exactly sure. Haven't had a real chance to see him all this season. But I like them, and I think they're going to have Tim Price, and they're going to use him to run down the field, and I think they're going to beat Cocoa Beach.
All right, coming up, our top 5 list. There have been some major shakeups, at least in my list this week, and we'll discuss those coming up. It's that time of the week, our favorite part of the show. It's time for our top 5. Steve Wilson is not here this week, otherwise it would be his top, 15?
20.
Yeah. So anyway, I'll start off with my top 5. At number 5, moving back into my top 5 this week, following their impressive win over the Rockledge Raiders, I have the Titusville Terriers. Coach Wayne Lawrence also unofficially gets my vote for Coach of the Year. He has done a tremendous job turning that program around. At number 4, I have the Melbourne Central Catholic Hustlers with the Erdman boys and one of the best quarterbacks in the county, and Brandon Zarno. The Hustlers' high-octane offense is always something to behold anytime we see them play anywhere in the county, and they look like they're back rolling again after an impressive win against Trinity Prep, and they are back in business. At number 3, this may cause you to pull a Fred Sanford and clutch your heart and say it's the big one. You might wonder what's going on when I finish this list, but I have the Vieira Hawks at number 3. I did see them this Friday. I still think they're obviously one of the best teams in the county. However, that defense has me very concerned. They gave up a lot of points to a Space Coast Vipers team, a program that has a pretty good offense, but at the same time, it just does not look like a championship caliber defense. So that, along with the play of some other teams, influenced my decision there. Because at number 2, I had to bump up the Meriden Mustangs. In fact, I contemplated moving them all the way up to number 1 as far as how all these teams are currently playing. The reason I say that is just because in the past 3 games, the Mustangs have been extremely impressive. And to go and beat Palm Bay 31-0, I just think they're the hottest team in the county right now, and I think Coach McLean has hit his stride with this offense. The new players in this system that he brought in this year, including the quarterback, have really bought in, and they are just rolling. That brings me to number 1 team, and it's too bad Steve's not here to revel in this. It took me, only 10 weeks, but I am moving the Cocoa Tigers into the number 1 position. I know Coach Wilkinson will be happy to hear that. The reason I say that is because all around the ball, they've been my number 2 team most of the season, but I do believe that they have the best defense in the county, and as we know, defense wins championships. I do think they would beat the Cocoa Tigers in a head-to-head, the Meriden Mustangs in a head-to-head matchup. So Cocoa moves into my number 1 spot. That's my top 5. Orville, I have a feeling yours will look a little bit different.
It will look a little bit different, but let me say one thing first. It's nice to see that at least you've come down to earth a little bit, but some of the other picks that you've made still tells me that the medication the doctor has not gotten right. But hopefully they will continue to work on that, and from time to time you'll get better. Steve Wilson not here to hear this. I know that he would have loved to hear you say the Vieira Hawks or the Cocoa Tigers, the number 1 team in your top 5. Although you do have to realize that you will not get an invitation this week to Kevin May's breakfast.
That's right.
And Steve and I both go to Johnny Wilkinson breakfast, so there's no room for you there. So you do not get breakfast next week.
Coach McLean, you better get the table ready. I'm already on Merritt Island, so
There you
I'll
go.
just sit over there.
My top 5. I have 2 number 5s this week. I moved the Heritage Panthers actually down. I had them at number 4 last week. A heartbreaking loss that the Friday night locker room did last week to South Fork, 34-33. So I can't take them out of the top 5. I still think they're a very strong team. I have them at number 5, along with a team that we've watched all year and made a lot of comments about how well they're doing from week to week. They also, like Merritt Island, beat the Palm Bay Pirates, and that is the Titusville Terriers. At number 4, I have 2 teams. I'm like Steve now. I've got a top 20.
You should run for office.
I should. Melbourne Central Catholic back into my top 5. They're at the number 4 spot, along with the Bayside Bears. Bayside Bears 5-0 in the district, and they just keep rolling on and rolling on. They beat Okeechobee last week 43-14, another district contest. I have the Bears and MCC Hustlers at number 4. At number 3, I agree with you. I think the Merritt Island Mustangs are playing tremendous football right now. Jeff McLean has got that team, again, hitting on all cylinders. They move up 2 spots. I had them at number 5 last week. They move up over Palm Bay, and I actually took Palm Bay out of my top 5 just because now they have 2 losses in the district. My number 2 team, and now I'm going to go for the Vieira Hawks and you're not. But my number 2 team stays the same as it always has all year long. It hasn't changed. This team keeps winning every week after week after week. They continue to put up big numbers on offense, and so you have to like that. My thing here, it's going to be fun to watch the Vieira Hawks and see how they do in the playoffs. That's the key right there, because they're going to go up, number 1, against some teams they've never seen before other than on film. And they haven't played a lot of strong teams. I think the strongest team they've played all year is Todd Wilson and the Melbourne Bulldogs. So that's going to be the next big step for the Vieira Hawks will be the first round in the playoffs. I have the Vieira Hawks at number 2. And you know what my number 1 team is. Last week it was just 3 words, the Cocoa Tigers. But got a couple more words this week since Steve's not here, so I'll be able to spend a little more time. But last week Johnny Wilkinson sat the number 2 rusher in the county, and that's Justin Weaver. He's right at and ready to break the 1,000-yard mark as a rusher for the Cocoa Tigers. So what do? They set Weaver. They bring Chauncey Gardner from the defensive side and move him over to a running back. Just, hey, let's try him out. 186 yards later on the ground, the Cocoa Tigers win another ball game. Quarterback Bruce Judson, freshman last year, has rushed for 533 yards from the quarterback position, and he has thrown for 1,350 yards and 19 touchdowns. That's the reason the Cocoa Tigers are still number 1.
All right, Anthony, pretty interesting list there. What's yours look like?
If I can take out the words out of Steve's mouth, I'm going to go ahead and put the Melbourne Bulldogs at number 1. If he was here, he would vote the Melbourne Bulldogs at number 1, right?
Well, you never know with Steve.
Number 1?
No.
Number 1? No.
No, but
Okay, should we give a full disclaimer here?
yeah, we should.
You
No,
must be on Todd Wilson's payroll, that's all.
no, but as a contribution from Todd Wilson's program, I put the Melbourne Bulldogs at number 5, tied with the Bayside Bears. Melbourne has played a very difficult schedule. They've played a lot of undefeated teams, and they came very close to beating the Vieira Hawks. I like them at number 5, Bayside. Another very impressive team. They go each year in and out with a coach, and the fact that those players are able to do it, very impressive. Number 3 team, Merritt Island. After that decisive win against Palm Bay, just very impressive. They, like you said, they are rolling on all cylinders. My number 2 team has got to be the Vieira Hawks. They're playing well, but like Orville said, first round of playoffs, the number 1 team has got to be the Cocoa Tigers. And once again, I look for a deep playoff run from them.
Yep. All right, well, that wraps it up for this week. We'll have Steve Wilson back next week, and we'll get extra memory card space ready so we can get all 30 or 50 of his teams in there. For Orville Wilson and Orville Wilson
And Anthony Susong.
for Orville Susong and Steve Wilson, and this week Anthony Knockreiner. Again, Anthony, thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure, and we'll see you next week.